Welcome, friends. Welcome, welcome. How are you all today? I got some thumbs up. Yeah, I got some smiles out there. My name is Trevor Yarish, and I own the Hive here. First off, I just wanted to say thank you all for showing up and for being here in this space with us. I have a real passion for creating containers, doing container setting. And one of the most powerful things that you can do is create a container that is an intentional space where people feel comfortable enough and safe enough to show up fully, to share and have hard conversations, to share deep emotional things that are close to them and close to their hearts with each other. And a container, it's not just a physical space, though. It's how we all show up in the space. It's the things that we bring to set the space. It's the people who are here with us. So I just wanted again to say thank you for being here. The format of the event, we're going to have some interviewing happening first. So we'll have a panel up here, and Gabby will be doing some interviewing. Then we're going to move into some sharing. So we have some community sharing that will happen after the interviews. And then after that, we have these incredible tables back here with a bunch of different things to look at, books and information sharing. And we invite you to go back and check out the tables and be in community with each other and meet people you haven't met before. And then towards the end of the afternoon, we're going to be doing a book giveaway. And we'll be giving away 2 books today. One of them, let's see. So the 2 books are, Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson. And then the other one is The Sun Does Shine by Anthony Ray Hinton. Both incredible books. And so we'll be doing a book giveaway towards the end, and Gabby will be handling that. So without further ado, thank you again for being here. Gabby, come on up. I'll have our panelists come on up too. And we'll get this thing started.
Thank you, Trevor.
Also, one more quick note to the panelists. Just go ahead and keep the mic nice and close to your face when you talk.
Testing, testing.
That's perfect.
Well done. It's a little bit awkward, but we get used to it, right? Let's actually do just some quick introductions on name, what community you're from, and what you do in that community. So I'll start for myself. I am Gabby Johnson. I live in Grants Pass, and I do a couple different things in our community. I am involved in the homeschool community because my kids are homeschooled, and I do community organizing, and I have been doing work with Grants Pass Remembrance for about 5 years now, before it became known as Grants Pass Remembrance. And I just recently came on with the Oregon Remembrance Project as Director of Community Engagement. Excited about that.
Oh, my name is Jayden Ruff. My pronouns are she, her. I am the director of the South Coast Health Equity Coalition, serving both Coos and Curry counties. I live in North Bend, and I've been in Oregon about 8 years, originally from South Georgia, a peach-growing community called Roberta. And I wear a couple hats in our community. So I'm a community activist. I am a planner of things. I am also a housing commissioner. So I'm the chair of Coos and Curry Housing Authority. And I also serve on the board of HIV Alliance, which really is seated in a lot of harm reduction and accessibility. And so that was one of my initial hats when I first moved here, and moved to Coos Bay. There's so much, but that's about it.
Thank you, Jayden. What about you, Steve?
Hi, I'm Steve Greif. I grew up in North Bend and came back to live and work in my community. One of those guys that didn't leave. I was a teacher at North Bend High School for over 32 years and a coach there, a key club advisor. I really believe in community service. That was something that was really important to me. I have retired, and I have been on the board of the Coos History Museum. I'm not currently a board member, but I volunteer 2 days a week down there, and that's where I met these guys. I met a whole new people after I retired from high school life. The Coos History Museum has been around since the 1890s, but we really didn't have a true building, a container space to do all our stuff until about 10 years ago when we built a new building. And we'll tell you the story about a significant addition to that building because of what Taylor brought to us. So I'm here to tell a little bit of story about what's going on in Coos Bay. Pretty excited about it, and I'm pretty excited about what you guys are doing in Grants Pass. Congratulations ahead of time.
Hi, everyone. My name is Taylor Stewart, and I'm the Executive Director of the Oregon Remembrance Project. I help communities with truth and reconciliation projects around repairing historical injustice. That's how I had the opportunity to work with both Steve and Jayden on what was my first ever project, back when that was just an obscure personal side project, where we worked to reconcile the lynching of a man named Alonzo Tucker, who had been lynched in Coos Bay in 1902. And now I have the opportunity to work with other communities across Southern Oregon and even out to Eastern Oregon. And it really has been a privilege. I feel like my two friend groups are getting together. I've got my Coos Bay friends, and I'm so glad they get to meet my Grants Pass friends. And so this community, the people in this room, is really the reminder of why this work is energizing.
Thank you so much. Now, I wanted to share with all of you, you've got some Post-it notes at the table. We will have a Q&A time later on. We encourage you to write down questions that you have so you don't forget them for later. This will be kind of an interview style, but also I like to think of it as a conversation. So if at any point you each have questions for each other, feel free to ask them real time, and the audience will wait until later on to ask their questions. But yeah, we can kind of move this along. I want to hear a little bit more, Taylor, if you could share with us just about kind of the brief arc of everything, so we can have some context of Alonzo Tucker and reconciling that history.
Yes. So in 2018, I graduated from college at the University of Portland. And that summer, I went on a civil rights trip to the American South. We went to Alabama, Mississippi, and Arkansas. And I had especially been looking forward to the portion of the trip where we'd be going to Montgomery because we had plans to see the new Equal Justice Initiative museums. In 2018, the Equal Justice Initiative opened up 2 museums. The first was the Legacy Museum, which chronicled the link between slavery and mass incarceration with the belief that slavery didn't end in 1865, it just evolved. And the second museum was the National Memorial for Peace and Justice, a memorial to the thousands of African Americans who were lynched in this country. The Equal Justice Initiative has documented nearly 6,400 lynchings of African Americans between the years of 1865 to 1950. When you enter the National Memorial for Peace and Justice, you're met with these 6-foot-high pillars that have the name of the state, the name of the county, and then the names of everyone who was lynched in that county. I'd always known about lynching in the abstract, but to actually read the names of people who were lynched in this country made this history personal. What personalized that history for me the most was seeing names with the last name Stewart, knowing that simply time and place separated me from the name on that pillar. I had lived in Oregon my entire life, and I couldn't believe that I had to go all the way to Montgomery, Alabama, just to learn that there had been at least one widely documented lynching of an African American in Oregon. There was an interest form online about getting involved with something called the Community Remembrance Project, which involved a series of acts of remembrance in the communities where the lynchings of African Americans took place to find healing and reconciliation through a sober reflection on history. I would love to say that when I first saw that interest form, my first reaction was, sign me up. How can I help? But in reality, I was too nervous to fill out the interest form. I figured, who am I to really think that I could be of any help? So I decided that I wasn't going to fill out the interest form. But thankfully, 2 encounters from the rest of my trip inspired me to change my mind. The first was a quote from John Lewis, longtime civil rights icon and congressman from Georgia who asked, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? I don't remember where I was when I read that quote, but I remember getting that feeling in my stomach where I was like, are you talking to me? I was like, I'll think about it, John. And the second encounter was the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum, where they just focused on the stories of everyday Mississippians who did their part to pave the way for justice. It wasn't about Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Malcolm X. It was about people like you and me. And so what I took away from that museum was that the realization that you don't have to be an extraordinary person to do extraordinary things. And so those two encounters gave me the courage to reach out to the Equal Justice Initiative and start the Community Remembrance Project. And shortly after that, I had the opportunity to connect with the Coos History Museum in Coos Bay, and over the next 3 years, we held a series of acts of remembrance to memorialize a man named Alonzo Tucker, Oregon's most widely documented African-American victim of lynching. February 2020, we held a soil collection ceremony near the spot of the lynching. In June 2021, we unveiled a historical marker in the community. And so I'm really excited to be able to share more from other people who were involved in that memorialization work as we talk about what historical reconciliation can look like in Grants Pass. We have this great example of this hard work that was done in the Coos Bay area, and so I'm really excited to share that story more with you all today.
Thank you so much, Taylor. Now, Steve and Jayden, I've got a question for you, and it comes in 3 parts, but we're going to do it one at a time. And it starts with, what were your first reactions to hearing about this idea?
If Taylor had taken my classes at North Bend High School, he would have known about the lynching a lot earlier. I've known about it as a local historian for a long time. I think a lot of people in the area knew about it. It'd been in the newspapers, you know, those 50 years ago columns you see every now and then, 100 years ago columns. But, and I used to talk about it because I tried, when teaching history to the kids at North Bend, and maybe you feel this feeling in Grants Pass as well, you get the kids and think nothing ever really important happened here. It all happened in the East. That all the eras of history we hear about were somewhere else. And so when we talk about any era in U.S. history, I try to find a local example. When we talk about the progressive era, the era where all these lynchings took place, I kind of wanted to shock the kids. You know, the KKK went to the Coos County Fair one year. There were leaflets around the city of North Bend put on people's cars, you know, in the 1920s. The Catholic school had its windows broken when bricks were thrown through it because the KKK was anti-Catholic. That all happened here. It wasn't something that just happened somewhere else. So I would mention the lynching too. There was a lynching here, and it happened to be essentially on the grounds of Marshfield High School, what will become Marshfield High School. And I say that whenever you go over there for your baseball games and your basketball games and that sloping road, 7th Street that leads up to the high school, I want you to think about there was a lynching there. And it's kind of shock therapy, really, but I wanted kids to understand that what we hear about in U.S. history didn't just occur somewhere else. So that was our feeling. And when Taylor approached the museum about this, he was, I think, a little surprised that this happened in Oregon, but it was great because we had the chance now, as a museum, to bring a wider audience to the story. It wasn't just high school kids now. We were going to tell the whole town, and we'll talk a little bit more about how that happened.
Yeah. Jayden, what was your first reaction?
I think my first reaction, and I'm sitting up here like rethinking everything, but I think my first reaction was like, this needs to happen. You know, it's our history, and I am also reminded of like when I remember sitting in history classes, and I graduated from a school in Lawrenceville, and then when we took Georgia history, there was like lynchings in the book right down the street from my high school. And so when I first learned of Alonzo Tucker, because I'm not a native Oregonian, when I first learned of Alonzo Tucker, and also like the idea was being introduced in a time where like globally, things were just not cool, not safe. It was during Black Lives Matter, a lot of community conversations, a lot of things, and here we go, memorializing Alonzo Tucker. But I think it's really important that even though like communities may feel, and not just feel unsafe, but I think like for me I understood in a whole different way of like why people of color were saying the things that they were saying. And also it made me analyze my privilege around safety and what safety looks like for different people. Here I was coming from the west side of Atlanta to Coos Bay and having Black people say, well, you haven't been talked to, or this was, and I was like, really? This is happening? And yeah, so like recognizing privilege for safety, because I was taught to fight at a really young age, and coming from the South, it was very different. Where my hometown was, it was very black, white, and there was tension, and so stepping in here out there to Coos Bay, and I'm like, there's this tension that's happening, and then it started to erupt as Black Lives Matter protests and fear, started coming up. So I'm really grateful that y'all thought enough of Mr. Alonzo Tucker to memorialize him, to continue to speak his name and bring him into the advocacy that has anchored, us in the community, especially our Black community.
Thank you. Steve, I have another question for you. In working at the History Museum, was that an easy conversation to have, or was there skepticism? Was there hesitancy? In our local community, we can have why would we want to talk about this more? Like, what was the first reaction of the people that you were around?
I think at first Taylor approached this as something the city could do. I think we thought the city of Coos Bay would take the reins and do something. It was a time of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter and all that kind of thing, and there were already some historical markers in the ground level around the street that comes down the museum called Front Street. It talked about where the old city hall was and the old fire department, They were just, and I think the city felt it was going to do something. It was a time when everybody wanted to do something, right? So the city said, let's put another marker down there where the lynching took place. And I don't think Taylor thought that was enough. And what wound up happening is, and I hope you guys understand this too, it's all about talking through the whole process and coming to some compromises. So rather than deal with the whole marker thing, what Taylor and I decided to do was, the center in Alabama has these jars of soil. Let's just have a soil ceremony to start with. And I think the city, the museum led it. Our director, myself, our education director, and we involved some students at the community college. We involved high school students of color that read some poetry. Gary will probably like that. We did some poetry that day. But we gathered soil from 3 specific locations where that Alonzo Tucker's life was impacted. The site where he was literally lynched, the site where he was shot, and a site where he hid out when he escaped the first night. When the mob came, he escaped and hid under the docks. And we collected soil, and we had a soil event. We were going to fill 2 jars, one for the center in Alabama and one for the museum. And it was the February right before COVID was unleashed. We got it in just in time. Honestly, it was one of the top 10 days of my life. And same with you. I think this was his rookie event. He brought his parents down, and I think the whole town turned out. I mean, it was a huge event that day. Far more people came than I thought would come. And we did a wonderful thing where we had kind of a big a container full of the soil, and we asked everybody that was there that day to fill the jars. So it was a tangible thing. It wasn't like Taylor filled a jar and took it off to Alabama. We filled 2 jars. One was going to stay here, and the whole town put in a scoop. We had some reverends that did some prayers prior to the event. We had some singing. It was just a great event. And after that, we talked about the touchier thing, which was, that's one thing that could happen and it could go away and no one could remember that. But what about a sign, something that they'd always remember? And that was a little harder. So what we did there was we literally asked people to fill out. We had an online form that hundreds of people filled out, and we asked them to identify yourself. Are you Oregon Coast? Are you Coos County? Are you Central Willamette Valley or other? And we asked a series of questions on what you think we ought to do. Some people thought there should be a statue created. Some people thought there should be a scholarship created. Some people thought we should have a memorial garden. Some people thought, and we also asked about the sign, that the organization in Alabama would present the sign, would create a sign for us, cost-free, if we had a place for it. How do you feel about that? So we had a huge, in my view, a good response and a very positive response on a number of things. But the poll we did online coalesced around, the statues. Statues are being torn down right now. Remember, that was the era of Confederate statues, and the idea of a statue didn't work. The idea of a garden seemed not strong. But the idea of this sign, and the museum said, once the sign was sort of chosen, let's take it off the city's plate. It's an educational issue here, and we can have an exhibit in the museum, not just a sign outside. So that's how we got this sign. But I want to emphasize that I think if we'd gone for the sign first, it would have been far more difficult. I think the baby step of filling those jars was so tangible and so great that day. We had one of those sunny days in Coos Bay, which we rarely get in February. Then the sign came next. And I think you have a question you want to ask me later, but I'll say this now. The reaction to the sign, we put it by the front, we created a garden space by the front door. We put lights around it at night. We had a camera. We all wanted to make sure it was going to be protected. It's been there 4 years now. There's never been one rock removed, one plant pulled, any kind of graffiti. There's never been a negative thing. And I work at the museum front desk on Thursdays and greet people, and I've done that ever since that sign's been up, and it's always been positive. And what Taylor said would happen, happened. People actually come to Coos Bay and spend their money. I don't want to make this about economics, but he said this will be, and this sounds trite, it's a tourist attraction. It's not really a tourist attraction, but people will come to Coos Bay to learn the story about Coos Bay, and we'll be proud of it, and they'll stay overnight, and that happens. People come in the door all the time and say, we're glad you told this story. We're glad you have the exhibit in the museum. We're glad that Coos Bay owned up to its history, is telling the truth. And it's been an overwhelming positive. So if you don't be afraid of taking a step. People keep saying, why would a city or a museum want to talk about the hard things? And we're hearing that from the administration right now, aren't we? Let's cover up the hard things. Let's not make people feel bad about the past. After all, it's been 100 years since 1902, 125 years. But if we don't tell those stories and tell it in a truthful way, and I think it helps that the museum was the grounds for that. And because if you look at it as it's just educational, it's what it is. It's an educational event, and we're proud to present the truth. And we do that with Native American history at the museum, and women's history, and LGBTQ history. We have a lot of diversity events, and I'm super proud that that's the organization in our town that takes that on. I've talked too long.
Thank you, Steve. No, that's fine.
I want to add just a quick thing, just sort of reiterating the specialness of what Steve described. So, the marker that we put in Coos Bay is the same marker that the Equal Justice Initiative has helped place in communities across the country. And vandalism is a huge problem with these signs all around the country. And so to be able to say 4 years later that there has been no issue with vandalism is really a testament to the willingness to do something courageous, and then not only to do something courageous, but to do it well in a really sort of community-oriented spirit. And so from the city of Coos Bay, from the Coos History Museum, they were able to set a precedent where there wouldn't be a culture of vandalism around the marker. And so I just want to reiterate how special that is for other communities that have done the same project.
Thank you, Jayden. I totally want to hear from you.
I also just want to name that, the History Museum did work that the city of Coos Bay could not. I remember being on I wasn't a part of the planning committees and things like that. I was an advocate outside of those spaces, talking with communities when it would feel like a tug of war between, does the city own this, or does, and also the community, the input. Having Black community members feel like this is a part of their history, and that they want the city not to own it and things like that. So I think that the Coos History Museum has done an amazing job of holding it, and also being that place when the city rolls back policies, the Coos History Museum is I'll take that on, And so I think it is really great. And every time I bring someone to the community, every Juneteenth that we have, Alonzo Tucker is spoken, his name is spoken, he is embedded into the work into our history. And so every time I bring someone, I'm like, let's stop by the museum. I host a large conference every year, and every time we have, and it's very anti-racist, it's very Black. And every time we drive over there, and it's nothing like being right there, speaking his name and touching the plaque. It just is, it's massive, and when we think about accountability, who we are accountable to when doing this work is hard. I know I can say, Mr. Alonzo Tucker, I got it, And also I think what we learned is not having the lynching be the all that about Mr. Alonzo Tucker. And y'all were able, what I also heard when y'all were talking was how intentional you were. It was phases that they went through, probably frustration, probably oh my gosh, what did I get myself into, but it's a staple, and we get to carry that throughout Oregon history. So I'm really grateful to have fallen into your midst, into your advocacy, into the work that is hard, especially in a time where Black Lives Matter, people were under attack, folks did not feel safe, and here we are carrying the message of truth, of here's what happened. So
I just want to say one more thing about the sign. I introduced earlier the fact that I wanted kids to realize that events in American history happened here. So what the sign is, it's this big. It's a big sign. The front side tells Alonzo Tucker's story. We say his name. But the back side is sort of a synopsis of the progressive era and what happened with lynching in the United States. So it accomplishes that goal. It's an educational tool that says the West Coast has been part of American history too. Part of a racist history that sometimes West Coasters think it's all about the South, and it's all over the country.
I'd love to zoom in a little bit more on kind of that season of time where you are wanting to do this thing, and it hasn't happened yet, and you're seeking to communicate to your coworkers or neighbors this vision. Were there things that you did that were helpful in the process of helping it connect to your neighbors? How did you use the role that you played to help advance that conversation? Was it hard? Were there moments of this is never going to happen? Or did it feel like, oh, it's sparking, it's catching, there's something here?
With the jars, the first event we did, I think making it an educational event. It's not about lynching. It's educational about a time period where racism happened in our town. And I think when we involved, there was a kind of a black group at SWAC, a student group of students of color. And by inviting them, and they came with a busload of people, by inviting high school kids from both high schools there, the school superintendents, we made it an educational event, having a minister, say a prayer and kind of making a memorial. It took a little bit of the possible esteem out of it. It was more solemn and educational and joyful by reading, by having music, by having poetry. It seemed more joyful to me. Is that how you felt?
Yeah, I definitely think that the soil collection was a great first step, and that I think for everybody who was present, both those who were really excited about it, those who maybe had some hesitancy, that it was a great first step of like, wait, I actually feel better about this story having had this event than 24 hours before. That being able to be there in community, I think what folks really, what I learned was that we can't change the past, but we can always change our relationship to it. And that soil collection was the first time of really changing that relationship with that story. And I think what folks got to experience and what made them ready for the historical marker was, oh, there's actually a good feeling on the other end of this new relationship.
Jayden?
I think one of the things for me when you first said that, I was so exhausted. I mean, like, there was this massive pressure put on Black organizers during that time. I remember being added to like groups when they wanted to do like BLM marches, and like the Facebook messengers would they would be arguing about who's gonna lead it, and then they would have the question of, is anyone Black in here? And then I would like just leave the chat, because it's like it wasn't about me, it wasn't about like. It wasn't rooted in what actually was happening in our time. It wasn't rooted in what it felt like to be a Black person in those spaces, in those predominantly white spaces. And also, like, I think for the education piece of why was Oregon so white? Like the exclusionary laws that Oregon has, and being able to provide more context around that, because oftentimes, I mean, I would go into spaces and at tables and I would be the only Black person, Today is kind of shifted around a little bit. But when you think about, like, the work that sometimes it goes into and the responsibility of Black folks doing this work, and then, like, allies, they want to be helpful, like they would. But then it's like, oh, my gosh, like, how do we take a step back for them to take a step forward? How do we actually make sure that we're creating space to have conversations? I mean, I even down to when it comes to the trigger warnings, right? Like, safety is a privilege. Trigger is a privilege. Like, I have to navigate the world like this, And so being able to not feel like we had to water down history, to be able to carry the message of what actually happened, why this is important, the hours that went into it. And I came into it at a later stage, but when I found out what was happening, I was like, absolutely, this is my responsibility, and how can I show up? How can I support? And I think that's a lot of times, sometimes that's missed, because we always want to well, I can do this, and then it starts the inner fighting, but when we put the focus back on Mr. Alonzo Tucker, back on his story, and then also kind of zoom out to say, and what does this look like for Black Americans across the state of Oregon? What has their impact been? What did safety look like when that lynching took place? So it opened up this massive questions, right? Of what did the community look like before? What did it look like after? How did the Black community feel? Did they leave town, right? What does safety look like? And how can we reconciliate today? And so, yeah, that's all I have on that one. But It's really, yeah. I'm sorry, I may get off topic, but that's okay.
We're loving it. We're
All right,
taking
cool,
it all.
cool.
I would love to know. So present day, there's been a marker in town for 4 years. How has this story of walking through this community reconciliation, what has that meant for the Black community and how they feel about Coos Bay?
Oh my gosh! So I will tell you that the number in Black people have doubled. When I first got to Coos Bay, I felt like it was only 3 of us. you know. So what I do know is when you have cultural events, when you have Black visibility, and people Google before they move to a place, and so like for it does having a marker in a community does not mean that the advocacy is done, because there are still spaces where it feels where youth can feel unsafe and things like that. But we've created, from that first gathering, we did a needs assessment, the coalition that I run, we did a needs assessment, and we wrapped around our Black community because they were saying, well, like, yeah, like outside we know where we can go, but when we go to school, when we go to the grocery store, sometimes it still does not feel safe. And so what we created from there was a Black spaces. So now we have, it was called Soul Food Sunday, and it was a way for, it's a multi-generational space, but it was a way for us to like talk about Black history, to be able to advocate, to be able to have Juneteenth happen and be Black-led, you know, and also for Black people in our community, when they are experiencing violence or microaggressions and things like that, they have a place where they can go, where they have a sense of belonging. We don't even say safe spaces, it's a brave space where they get to show up however way they want to. And we also like don't look at numbers as success. What we do is we create the space, the person that needs that space, they utilize the space. You know, so sometimes it has looked like me making pancakes with a youth, affirming their Blackness when they're biracial, you know, letting them know that you don't have to pick one, you can be all the things at one time, you know. But yeah, so having a marker in our community, it also like anchors us in anti-racism as well. Like for me, he's who I'm accountable to. Community members that were there before Mr. Alonzo Tucker is who I'm accountable to as well. And they are the ones who allow me to keep that message going, you know, so.
Can you talk a little bit about Juneteenth and how and if what has happened with Alonzo Tucker and the historical marker and getting to like ground in that, how has that affected the Juneteenth celebrations and what has happened since? Is that a big question?
My staff would be like, please don't. So Juneteenth started at the History Museum, wrapped around the historical marker, and it was like 2 days on a weekend. And I think we did it like 2 years at the Coos History Museum, and then through the transition, the Equity Coalition ended up taking it on. And so now we have turned it into a week of celebration. So we partner with the History Museum, we partner with SWAC. It's not just in one Coos Bay anymore. Last year, I think last year, we had the biggest Juneteenth celebration per capita.
Yes, I advertised to everyone in my unofficial, but I think very well-informed opinion, Coos Bay has the largest Juneteenth event per capita in the state of Oregon. I tell everyone that per capita is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence, but it is still nonetheless true.
Oh my gosh, my staff were like, Jayden, please don't ever again. And but what we wanted to do, because if you think about like the region, we live in Coos Curry, and they're small towns, and there's like pockets of Black people throughout those towns. And so it was really important to make sure that like when we brought African drumming to the community, like we were like, hey, like FYI, you're gonna like be here for a whole week. You know, like each community gets African drumming. And yeah, it's been really amazing. I mean, I feel so blessed to be able to carry the message of Juneteenth. And this year we had conversations. So we had conversations, especially right now where like this administration is trying to erase us and things like that. And I get phone calls of like, Jayden, they're trying to erase trans people. I'm like, no, no one can erase us. But I've been having these conversations around, we've given people too much of us. You know, so much that like they feel like they can take it away when they want to or give it back. And so this year, our Juneteenth is really gonna be, it's named Rooted in Resilience, because we wanted to kind of bring the Juneteenth back to like its roots, its essence. And so in doing that, we're going to be looking at bringing like gospel hymns, like what did the Black church play in Juneteenth, right? And then like the foods, the history of Juneteenth, the many unsung heroes, you know, because oftentimes we think of the mass, like the giants whose shoulders we stand on, but they also had giants whose shoulders that they were standing on as well. And just kind of make sure that we are highlighting our Black community members through this year. It's called a melanated market, where we're going to be, you know, where we have like some Black vendors that usually are at our farmers market, and we're going to bring them on to it. And then also like right now we're working on standing up an NAACP. And so that is going to be a recruiting space as well, for the initial 100 signatures that you have to have in order to ask to stand up an NAACP. And so, yeah, Juneteenth is a day of visibility. Like when you think of like Pride celebrations, like Pride is a great thing, but it's a day of protest. Juneteenth is a day of remembrance. It's a day of saying like we ain't going nowhere. You know, it's a day of like bringing in the ancestors. You know, because I'm a Black person from the South. My ancestor had to like be resilient, had to hold down the fort in order for me to stand here today. And that's and so yeah, that's why I think Juneteenth, and I love the fact that Juneteenth are sprouting up all over Oregon, in a place where like, what a way to take back and be liberated, in a place where they once said that you cannot live here because you are Black. And now they have Juneteenth celebrations and Black History Month celebrations. You know, I love it. I love it. And I also think that as Juneteenth celebrations sprout up, we all need to be talking to each other. You know, we all need to be talking to each other. We all need to be making sure that we're asking our Black communities, like, what do you think Juneteenth should look like? You know, Juneteenth wasn't always brought up in our communities. You know, it's started out of Texas. Juneteenth was not this big old thing that they had in Georgia. I just know that my mom, whenever Juneteenth happened, we would go to church, you know. And so, yeah, it is all about like who are we bringing with us, and how are we creating spaces, and ally spaces, how are we creating spaces for Black voices to be amplified.
I want to add a quick little anecdote that I actually haven't had the chance to share with Jayden and Steve, but about a month ago, I was on a Zoom meeting with someone from the Nonprofit Association of Oregon. She was a Black woman, and she actually grew up in Bandon. And when I told her about the growth of Juneteenth in Coos Bay and how there was Juneteenth and African drumming in Bandon, that meant a lot to her. She, you know, grew up there, you know, went to the East Coast, eventually came back to the Portland area, and finding out that Juneteenth happened in her home community made her want to go back there in a way that she hadn't always felt. And so the events that they're putting on really are helping connect people to their community, even those who may not even be there presently. But I talk to people all the time who have some element of home in Coos Bay, that hearing about this encourages them, even if they aren't still presently living in the community.
No, I really appreciate that. And I also think that that's why it's important for me and us as an organization, when we say we are a regional health equity coalition, like we need to be regional, you know, because a lot of times things can center around Coos Bay, but like for us, because of Juneteenth, the only reason why we were able to have a Juneteenth celebration in Brookings was because now we have a Soul Food Sunday. And so, like, with Juneteenth celebrations that we are having, now we have Soul Food Sunday in both places. Now we have Black student unions at both high schools, you know. Well, and Brookings is expanding from just the high school, but also to the middle school. So you have all of this visibility, and when you have visibility like that, that's positive health outcomes, you know. It reduces stressors. It lets people know that they're not in the space by themselves. Oftentimes, I'm not the only person that will show up to a school anymore. I got a whole bunch of mamas who was like, "What happened in the school?" You know. And so, what ends up happening behind the scenes of Juneteenth is community. It's this deeply rooted community, and where we are looking after each other, but not just after each other, after our allies as well.
I love how community reconciliation there's a transformation that just keeps catching into so many different areas and nooks and crannies. Like, this is what's happening. And it continues to happen. I have a question on kind of Coos Bay as a whole. Has this work sparked any further work? Has it kind of caused a shift in how people think about history? Like, has anything happened since the historical marker installation that...
Yeah, let me tell you about another great thing that came out of this. Zachary Stocks, who's in charge of the Oregon Black History Museum, was a big part of the soil collection event and the historical sign marker at the museum, and is now a good friend of mine too. But after he left Coos Bay, and he learned by being there that there once was a mining community called Beaver Hill that was perhaps the largest community of color in the state of Oregon in the 1890s, and you're saying, what? Coos County had a black population? Because you don't make a connection. But that is an actual fact. And in fact, it was multi-diverse. It had Japanese miners, it had Irish and Welsh miners, it was an amazing amalgamation of people who were there for an economic reason, but they were there and they were living, and they had a school and a hospital and an actually incorporated town that we, meaning history nerds like me, knew about. And when Zachary found out about it, he said, we need a state historical marker there. And Zach pushed it, and the museum helped, and the Remembrance Project helped. We all pulled together on this, and the community got the only historical marker now in the county of Coos is celebrating a diverse community in our area. You can't see anything anymore. It's private land, and all the mines have been covered up. But the sign has photos of a diverse community that lived here and tells that story. And so that's another educational component about all this. In my mind, the best thing that's come out of all of this is we've all learned a lot more history as a community than we ever knew was there. It's always been there, but now it's been almost unleashed, I'd say. Once we got the soil collection event and the sign up and the first Juneteenth ever on the Oregon coast, it became something that what else can we do? And I think that sign was great. It's another way of people who visit the Oregon coast to realize you're not just in some rural white zone where they never had any history here other than pioneers. And by the way, that sign also honors the Native Americans. We try to do that always. Every exhibit that we put up, we talk about what would the Native Americans want us to do with this exhibit too. So we're trying to be as diverse as needs to be.
Now, remember that a long time ago I said something about a 3-part question? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what happened to that question?
That has shifted, but it's kind of morphed. So I think the question now is, what has it meant to you each to be a part of this work? And how has it affected your connection to your community and your neighbors? And Jayden, can we start with you?
Okay. Oh my gosh, I'm like, I'm not gonna cry. I don't like crying in public. But I don't know what else I would be doing. I think that advocacy, activism, anti-racism, truth-telling, history, context, lover of context, all the things. I mean, I don't know what else I would be doing, And so I remember being in Safeway, and a black lady, she was getting water, and I bent down and helped her get water, and she was like, Jayden, I know you. And she was like, I just want to tell you that you're on a mission. And I don't need to like provide more context or say anything else, but you're on a mission. And for me, always questioning, like, what am I here to do? What am I here to do? What does community, because community, the definition of community has changed as well. It looks very different from when I came to Oregon with not feeling connected to community, and today being really rooted in community. It's completely different. And also, I think that it's one of those things where this work, you can't just be taught into, like it has to be inside of you. I am a mama bear, I'm an auntie, when it comes to taking care of my people, and I wouldn't know what else to do. And so, but the accountability of it I think sometimes when you work in nonprofits, it's like the nonprofit niceness, and I'm the girl that says no. I'm the girl that says, I'm sorry, but this collaboration may have to come to an end because I see that it's causing harm, and it's not Jayden. And Maya Angelou says it all the time of like, I come as one, but I sin as 10,000, Like I know who I'm accountable to. I know what community looks like, and I know what it means to censor their voices versus mine, And I also understand of what it looks like when you are a part of your own priority population. Like, as I'm advocating for black people, I'm also advocating for myself as well, right? Like, I live in a community, I want it to be safe as well. This history happened, so I want to be able to talk about it because it's my history as well, And so, that is a big question. Oh my gosh. But I also think I'm certain that my spirituality, and I sent my bio over, and I always include like the women that were like my caretakers. So I always name my big mama, Miss Tit, my grandma Ruby, my great grandmother Flossie, my grandmother Lizzie, my mom Manila, and my auntie / mom Mantilla. Because those were the women who like poured into me. Like they were the protectors of family. So now I know how to protect community. They met me right where I was at. They saw me, they spoke into me. Now I get to do that as well, right? And so when I think of me being a practitioner of anti-racism, it's all about who am I bringing with me. It means nothing if I'm the only one still at the table by myself, So oftentimes when people are like, Jayden, can you come? I'm like, I got somebody else that can come do that. And but yeah, it's a major responsibility, especially in a time like this, in a time like this when so much out there is telling you that you are wrong, you are other, you're not supposed to be here. And then doing this work around history is like, well, why does it matter? We shouldn't talk about that. You're trying to, all of this stuff. And it's like, yeah, no. So I'm grateful that, I'm grateful for the work that y'all have done because I've taken it and ran with it, I've taken it and ran with it and prioritized education in the most authentic way ever. Where we have courageous conversations everywhere we go. And also I know how to say, no, thank you.
Thank you. How about you, Steve? What has this work meant to you to be a part of it, and how has it affected your connection to your community and your neighbors?
I'm really proud that the museum took a part of this. When you're a teacher and there's a lot of things in American history that are tough to talk about. What we did to the Japanese in World War II, what we did to Native Americans, what we've done to women, what we've done to blacks, in slavery. And so what Taylor's taught me is you can have a new relationship to that. So my relationship to it prior to all this was, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but there's a lot of negative things in American history, but you need to hear it. The Ku Klux Klan story, you need to hear it, and it happened here and you need to hear it. So, but now my relationship is different. My relationship to it is, I feel like there's been a healing in our community. I feel proud of my community. How many people showed up the day that we did the soil collection? How many people showed up and were online the day we Zoomed the sign thing? There were, I think, 600 people at least. And for that community to have 600 people that in support and not have anything negative happen that day, no one shouted anything negative, I felt better about my community than I ever had. I was worried what my community might do, that because there are some redneck people in that community that still have Trump flags and running around and, that kind of stuff. And I didn't want that to mar, and it hasn't marred anything we've done. There's nothing negative about that. So having that happen, and it made me feel safer in my community. That might seem strange coming from a white guy, but it feels safer for I guess you'd say, a more liberal person to be in this community. And it gave us a chance to all have that reconciliation.
I want to just add, I think on the day of the actual event, we did have people, because it is, thank you for naming that. Yeah. But also we had community members who were like, absolutely not. So before you even feel like you're going to come in or turn in this driveway, we're going to stop you right here. And I think the cool thing about being in a small community, we talk about it in de-escalation when we're getting ready for Pride, right? It's that's somebody's cousin, so, that's somebody's brother, and you could be like, what you doing here? But, yeah, so just wanted to kind of name that as I felt really great I didn't have to go de-escalate anything. My dad, who's a black man, who I'm like, please don't de-escalate anything, okay, and it felt really good to have the allies, the folks in the community say, no, not today. This is history.
The question, how do you reconcile lynching, has transformed my life. As I mentioned, when I took that trip to the South in 2018, I had zero activism experience, zero community organizing experience, and I think Gabby has mentioned that this work is transformative. And not only is it transformative for the people who are doing the work, it is transformative for all the people who then follow in your footsteps. What has been probably the coolest thing for me over these last 7 years is to watch the way that this work has snowballed, where it started in Coos Bay. Gabby and I met in person for the first time at the historical marker unveiling, and we dreamed about what could a similar project about reconciliation look like in Grants Pass. And in the last year, this work that we started here called the Sunrise Project has spread to Ashland, LeGrand, and Pendleton, with more communities wanting to take it on as well. There are now some folks in Southeast Washington who want to do a Sunrise Project in their state. What would it look like to bring historical reconciliation to Washington? Just this last few weeks, a college student from California reached out to me who wanted to, what would it look like for us to do reconciliation about lynchings that happened in the state of California? And so similar to, what Steve said earlier about wanting people to know that history happens in our communities, I jokingly but very seriously tell Coos Bay that one day you're going to be known as the Montgomery of Oregon, and Grants Pass is Birmingham, and that what we're starting, what was started in Coos Bay, what we're doing here in Grants Pass really is snowballing into other places. And so when I look around, I see ordinary people who are able to do extraordinary things. And so that has been, how does this work made me more connected to community, is I feel connected to the wider state of Oregon in a way that I never had growing up. I've lived in Portland my whole life, and I always had a strong sense of being a Portlander, but I never really had a strong sense of being an Oregonian. And it wasn't until I was able to meet folks, and not just meet folks, but invest in their community, to learn about life there, that I now have a fully formed identity as an Oregonian, because I've had the opportunity to meet folks like you across the state that give me inspiration that this work is going to continue on.
That is a beautiful segue to our next segment. Now, stay here because we'll come back to you too, but we're going to be joined on stage by a few people from Grants Pass Remembrance, and we're going to share a little bit about what this work has come to look like right now in our community. And I got to tell you, I already have ideas about what some next steps could be because of this conversation, but we won't share those ones yet. So Dorothy and Quinn and Zelda, if you could join me up here. And we're going to share just a couple little pieces. We're going to start with events. Some events that happen in our community that Grants Pass Remembrance hosts. And we'll start at the beginning of the year with the MLK event.
Hi, my name is Dorothy, and I have been working with Grants Pass Remembrance for a couple or 3 years now. It's been a while. We've had 3 Martin Luther King celebrations, 2023, 2024, and 2025. And they get bigger and better every year. They're held at the high school. They are joyous. We try to have an educational component, a music and dance and poetry, an engagement piece where there's something for people to do. I really appreciated the comments about the soil collection and how getting your hands on something makes you feel like a more active participant rather than just having information imparted to you. And the past couple of years, we've had a community fair associated with the MLK celebration as well. And that community fair has been just awesome because we have groups from around the community, liberal groups, conservative groups, government groups, nonprofit groups, faith groups, all kinds of groups throughout the community getting together to share information and be together as a single community. So an event like this has a lot of moving parts, and if you're interested in thinking about how can I help with this, there are a few ways. There's help with the planning, which honestly, as soon as MLK 2025 ends, we're starting to think about MLK 2026. Helping to get the word out. There's lots of opportunities to volunteer day of, which the past couple of years, it's been the Saturday before the official Monday MLK holiday. And then just showing up and being in attendance and participating, bringing a few friends and talking about it afterwards. But the opportunity to celebrate a man like the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who spoke truth to power at the same time as he had a full embrace of universal unconditional love to every single person, including people who wanted to kill him. That's an empowering and a challenging message to carry with you. So love that event.
Zelda, here, come scoot down a bit more, actually.
I'm Zelda, and I'll be talking about Boatnik, which is another one of our annual events. This year it's Saturday, May 24th, starting around 9:45 in the morning. And our float, which we've done every year, this will be year 3, right? For the float, this year's theme is unity and community. So we'll be celebrating our community all together. We hand out sunflower seeds to have the community plant sunflower seeds in support of our idea of being a sunrise community. And those riding on the float will be wearing or invited to wear clothes representing their various heritages and backgrounds and careers, so that way we can see as a community all of our differences coming together. Last year, we have a quote from one of our participants last year. Last year's Boatnik Parade was a moment of hope. Despite the history of the parade and our community, I chose to walk, to be visible, to represent. And what I found was incredible, a community ready to embrace change. Handing out sunflower seeds, waving with my family, and feeling the warmth of the crowd cheering for our sunrise float. It was a glimpse of what Grants Pass can be. It was a day when our Sundown history started to feel like a sunrise community. If you want to be a part of that change, join us this year. Let's walk together and build a community where everyone feels seen and valued. And for me, I and my family joined in Boatnik because I was raised in Fremont, California, one of the most multicultural melting pots in the world. But 15 miles north of there is where my parents were raised in Sundown Town, 35 years before me. And so I love the idea that we are here welcoming people and saying, no, we are no longer this community, because we still absolutely have a reputation of that. And without being visible, we're not going to change it.
Hello, everyone. My name's Gwen Arrington. I came to the Sunrise Project via Gabby. She was instrumental in having me be a part of this, and something that was part of the community. And I started last year, which was our second annual event, Juneteenth event, and I helped put together that event, and I was part of the, bringing the big red velvet cake. Which was very, very great. We had a lot of different people, community members were able to come together. The Albertson Bakery was very helpful. They put together the cake. We kind of gave them an idea about what we wanted, and they gave us a great big discount. So I went back to them this year as well to maybe small. Do a small cupcakes, so it'll be a little bit more manageable than a big sheet cake. So it's going to be very important. This event is great to bring the community together. Last year, when I was taking the cake and bringing it to the ceremony, there were people in the store who didn't understand or know what the cake was about, and they were gleefully and ready to say, yeah, I'll be there. I wanted to, please. I just kind of told them about it, and people showed up. So I think this event, the Juneteenth event, is a way for the community, as Zelda said, to bring us together and to change our history and make it something that's more equal and collective for everybody going forward.
Those are the 3 events that we do every year, and whatever layer people get involved with, whether it's the planning or the day of volunteering or the showing up, I have found it to be transformative. And so there's something about getting to, whether you walk along close up and experience a transformation that comes from that, or you just hop in on the day of, it is a good thing to come together as a community. We have a number of tables in the back that we'll engage with later that talk about more of the events and the things that we do. We collect oral history ongoingly. We have monthly coalition gatherings. That has been personally transformative for me. There's a way in which it holds me accountable. I really noticed you talking about accountability, Jayden. It's an important thing. We hold each other accountable. Those who have come before us hold us accountable. Those who are coming after us hold us accountable. And getting together and remembering that together really does make a difference. We're going to go ahead and sit down now and start our Q&A.
Can I just
Yes,
say,
please.
I want to thank Jayden and Steve for, definitely sharing a lot about their history, about the Juneteenth, and just being a part of a growing population that's changing Oregon. So thank you.
Thank you, Quinn. Are there any questions? Did anybody write down any questions on their Post-it notes? Do you have any ready, or do you want to? Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Trevor.
My question is not fully formed, but it's itching at the back of my head. That we're talking about having a historical marker here, about being a sundown town, and we are certain that we don't want it unless we can really say this is a welcoming community. And I can see the way you got there. I'm still working on how we get there. And because a lot of what you were saying, Jayden, people say, oh, we don't want to talk about that. It's shameful, or why would you bring up that? And I think we're doing a fairly good job of bringing people along, but I'm still struggling with that. Don't do it unless you mean it kind of thing. If you have anything to say about that.
I love what you said. Don't do it if you. But I think just naming like what defines a welcoming community. You know, what I just got to witness is that y'all are doing the work. You have MLK, like you're invested. So much that like it is spreading, you know. And so I think one for me is visibility. Like you continue to be visible, continue to do the things. But I also just want to challenge, like, everybody's definition of safety looks different. Everybody's definition of a welcoming community looks different, you know. And so those are conversations to have with community. But I will hand it over to them because, like, they, you know, they didn't stop, you know.
I would just say cast a wide net of who you involve in that event. Involve students and teachers that are on your side. Involve churches that are on your side. Think of every group that would be on your side and get them involved. When we did the online poll thing, and we had a pretty good response, and it was way more positive than I thought it would be, it allowed us to say, I think we're ready. I think we're ready because we cast a wide net. And we didn't even ask just people in North Bend, Coos Bay, or even Coos County. We got responses from Portland, Eugene, Eastern Oregon, you know, all over the state of Oregon. And Oregonians seemed to say, come on, Coos Bay, do it. So we did it. So I would just say cast a wide net, involve as many people as you can. It'll make you feel positive about it. And from an educator's point of view, anytime you involve the schools in around an event, you're really training the next generation, which is a win-win.
Yeah, you know, the way I think about it is the marker being the start of the story and not necessarily the end. Where we'll have this statement, and what I've sort of referred to it as this is the sunrise commitment, and you know, because people will say, but are we at risk of bringing in people to a community that is not yet a sunrise community? Are we at risk of bringing people into a sundown town and oh no, now you're here? But I think that similar to what Jayden and Steve described is that when you do that big event, there is a cascade of transformation that happens. And one of the reasons why Steve, you know, is emphasizing bringing in all these people is we don't know how all those different people are going to then go take whatever happened to that unveiling ceremony and then grow it in their own lives, in their own circles. And so I think for me, I think of a potential marker as, all right, you know, we've been in phase 0 this whole last 4 years, and that marker is the start of the next phase about, you know, we will have done the remembrance, and then we're going into that next phase of repair, of actually creating the community that can live up to that ideal that we espouse, but it starts with us first making that commitment.
I gotta say, I have a little spark of an idea that I'm just gonna say out loud. And just because I have the microphone doesn't mean my idea is any different than anybody else's. So if you have ideas, I want you to write them down. But I'm just so struck by the soil collection being like a stepping stone. I was in a meeting with someone at Visit GP locally. They do a lot of work with the community and with tourism. and a mural came up. We've talked about a mural quite a bit. And when you talked about the soil collection and that kind of tangible thing, I had this visual of like, I wonder if you could have everybody put their fingerprint on a mural, like some way of being a part of that moment. And you know, murals are all over our community. Like this is a part that would be a part of us, and it might be that kind of a thing, that kind of a stepping stone to the next, to the historical marker, which we are really hoping for.
Yeah, I think art is advocacy. Art is resistance. In times like this, Toni Morrison, I remember she was like, well, I can't write. I can't produce. And someone who she was getting advice from was saying, in times like this is when artists go to work, you know? And so what you were talking about is maybe a community art project, you know, involving multiple, like a lot of people and cross sectors and things like that. But yeah.
I'd agree. Just recently, our museum partnered with the city of North Bend, and we had an elementary, a middle school, and a high school event, and each event had an artist and an historian, and they centered around a specific thing. In my case, I was with elementary kids, and we had Depression-era money as part of our history. So what we did was I talked a little bit about the history to the kids and had some actual coins there, and then the kids did an art project, a really cool art project. But they made a tile or something that will be permanent. So, you know, involving an artist in an event where lots of people can contribute to the art, even, I like the idea, just even a thumbprint on the wall, you know, or a handprint on the wall, that means, I think people like saying, I was there the day the sign was put up, right? I still hear that. I remember that sign, or I helped you fill the jar. So the day that you have an event, the more they can tangibly do something, the better. And they'll always remember it. And some historian in your town better write it down so it's not forgotten.
Go ahead.
Hi. I want to thank you for the exuberance and the encouragement that you bring, because I have been pretty discouraged lately. I've been going to the marches and things and feeling a little better. But, you know, I was a Vista volunteer back in '69. So, in working towards a lot of these things, and eventually when I moved here, got involved in community education with the Women's Crisis Support Team. But I'm really interested in knowing how the current trend towards fascism has affected your work, how you've dealt with it personally, how do you keep going, I guess, is what I want to hear.
Well, we just keep having programs at the museum. We have a First Tuesday talk series, and we just look for speakers that have information on all kinds of subjects. Last Tuesday, a woman who was incarcerated in World War II, Japanese camps, as a child, spoke about her experience. That was we had 92 people show up. 92 people wanted to hear that story, and she told it well. You have people in your community who have been through something. Have them speak about it. I'm not sure what your museum situation is down here, to be honest with you, but look for an agency, maybe even here.
The library actually might be a good one.
Libraries, they do a lot of,
Museum of Art.
Coos Bay Public and North Bend Public Library do a lot of this too. That's exactly right. Libraries are safe spaces, and you look for speakers who talk about if they were involved in World War II and they fought against fascism, have them tell that story, you know. That's the thing. Every community has great speakers. Just go find them.
You know, so we're getting ready for Juneteenth, and I am sort of rethinking some of the message that I am hoping to share in the different communities around the state of Oregon. So Juneteenth is on June 19th, and on June 17th is when they're doing the Trump military parade. And so I think that we have a unique opportunity 2 days later to really claim, like, this is the American heritage. This is the legacy that we want to pass on about who we want to be. And so, you know, so much of what's happening national feels hard to impede in any capacity. But I feel like the way that we celebrate Juneteenth this year is a great opportunity for us in our communities, albeit small, to claim a version of Americanism that we can actually be proud about, that we can reclaim the colors of red, white, and blue on this day in Juneteenth. And so my advice is help come out to Juneteenth with us this year. Our event in Grants Pass will be on the 19th, so just 2 days later. And that will be a day of celebration, renewal, and reclamation.
I think to answer your question as well, like it's big, it's scary, and also, like, I don't really even use the words fascism only because it's not a word that I grew up familiar with. I say oppression, like I can give it a different name, but one thing that I know is I can't save everything. I can't make everything great, That's the other side of, like, this, when we think about the work and the amount of pressure we put on our allies, right? Of like, oh my gosh, like this is a lot. How do I do this when, like, safety, I have an intern right now who is like, Jayden, like, I'm scared to leave my house every day as a person of color, And so, like, that's our realities, right? Like, this is hard, this is scary, it's big. What I will say is a couple things that keep me going is, one, feel the feelings. Like, it's okay to sit in the hurt, It's okay to, like, and be vulnerable with the people that you're around. Like, if it's too much to be looking at the news and stuff, turn it off, Identify something that brings you joy, because that's how my ancestors kept going, like they were oppressed and they found joy. You had women going in the kitchen being chemists, making red velvet cakes, You know what I'm saying? And so, like, yeah, like, and to know that, like, when white supremacy is thriving, it's invisible, right? So I name the things, I call the things out, but I also make sure that I'm prioritizing me so that way I can show up in a more intentional way, right? Like, I don't want to go into places if I'm, like, overwhelmed, exhausted. It's like rest is resistance. The people that came before us, they didn't know self-care was a privilege, okay? And so being able to do it, and if you are afraid of the going to the walks, and, like, there's a place where everyone in community organizing and advocacy, like, sometimes, like, only thing I can do is drop off water, Yeah, so it's like there's so many different pieces that make movements, and you don't necessarily have to be the person that's on the front line. Somebody asked me, Jayden, where were you at? We didn't see you at the walk, or and I said I was getting my nails done. I was getting my hair done, Well, because I mean, like, the amount of, like, expectation and pressure that you put on another person. Like, what does my safety look like going to a rally, when I do this work Monday through Sunday, And so, like, there's different ways. Sometimes I am the person that will drop off the water. Sometimes I am the person that will share the post, I may not be there, but I'll share the post, And so, yeah, like, kind of I'm liberating you to relieve some of that pressure, okay?
I want to add just one little bit on that if we weren't feeling pain right now, then we'd be disconnected. And so there are seasons in our story where it will be very painful to remain connected, but to still be able to say, I'm still here. And how can I relieve the pressure? How can I find joy, but I'm still here? I'm not going to run and hide, because as someone with white skin, I could run and hide and maybe relieve pressure in that way, but I would be disconnected from what's going on. So thank you, and yes to what you said.
Yeah, because, I mean, sometimes I'm like, I'm not leaving my house today. You, you know what I'm saying? So I think that's the thing of like us all. We know that now, as far as advocacy, that it's a lot easier to track the things because, for example, like when I was tracking LGBTQ bills, anti-LGBTQ bills, it would be like 600 it being introduced. Now they're really explicit, which people don't even realize. Like if you were to SWOT analysis what's happening, that's an opportunity. You know, we have a really massive opportunity for unity. We have a massive opportunity to say absolutely not, you know, and continue to do that, you know. And while we are marching, while we are speaking out, going to the events, learning more about the diversity that you have in the community, and also knowing, like, don't put the work on, like, people of color. You know, like, it's so, yeah, like, I mean, because that's the thing. But I also think that, you know, I found community in my community. The people that show up for me today, like my white friends, you know, when I'm sick, they making me soup. When they're sick, I'm making them soup. So just reiterating the neighbor, the community aspect, you know. Y'all probably all shop at the same grocery store, you know, see each other walking at the park. You know, you have community, and that's where I get to understand that I don't get to do any of this by myself, you know. So I'll give you a hug once I get down.
I had a couple of, observations and a couple of questions. I'll try and keep it short. I was wondering also, Gabby, like, what is our Fill the Jar event, right? That catalyzing event that brings people out. And I have been encouraged by the MLK event growth and how the event itself has grown, as well as the attendance and Juneteenth. The difference between, you know, the first year we did it and this last year. And I'm looking forward to the upcoming celebration. When the Coos Bay marker or sign was created and put in, it was sort of, I guess, and you mentioned this, Steve, it was at a sort of that peak of DEI, and we were in a moment where people were really embracing it, learning more about it. It was sort of this mass new awareness of this term privilege that most people hadn't ever contemplated before, and they were struggling with that. And so we're now in this moment where, you know, systematically DEI is being ripped out of all of our public institutions, and it's like it's the pendulum swinging the other direction right now. And I feel that anytime I talk about this work in the community, is just like that the timing. I keep hearing people talk about the timing and about how, you know. So I'm wondering, one of the questions I had for you, Steve, is actually before that, there was one other piece, which is the marker memorializing Alonzo Tucker. It was an acknowledgement and a memorial marker sign that talked about a moment in time. One of the things that I hear in this community is that fear around the sign or the marker we're trying to put up is an observance of something that happened, but also a declaration of who we are now. And I'm wondering, is that part of your message and sign in Coos Bay?
Yeah, definitely. We're not afraid to have not only the sign, but an exhibit inside the museum about Alonzo Tucker. And I think just saying that it's there is saying we're saying it out loud. So just keep saying it out loud. Whatever events you guys are doing. And when you do these events, it's so wonderful to have your neighbors come out. Right now, I can't believe what's happening in my community. I live just out of town where there's a Grange. And we organized a meeting a couple Saturdays ago just for people to get together and talk. We had 80 people in this tiny little Grange that just wanted to get it off their chest. And so you guys having these events is really great for your community because it allows everyone to see I have neighbors that feel like I do. And I'm not just talking about any minority group, anybody in your community that feels like they're part of the community, likes to know there are other people here that want you to be a sunrise community. And so keep having the events. That's the biggest thing.
You also mentioned, go ahead, Jayden, sorry.
I was just about to say, when you were reading the question, And when the butterflies come up or the fear comes in, like the people that came before us had those same things. And so I would just, urge you to get clear on what is our intent. Like, what is my intent, right? Like, if my intent is to do this work because I don't have any other option, right? Like, that's what the intent is all about. And so, yeah, like, there's gonna be fear, fear, fighting fear, it does nothing, but we fight fear with joy and truth, right? And so just wanted to name, when you were talking, that's what was coming up for me was like, okay, like I hear the butterflies, I hear the fear. We still got to keep going. Like y'all have established a project even amongst the fear, right? Like regardless of what y'all have this in your community. And so like hold on to that, and be like, so I think that's really important. And also like whenever we are like planning and doing like historical work or anti-racism work, when you were talking, I was like, yeah, like they're rolling back DEI, but that plaque still stands. You know what I'm saying? And so like that's the work, that's the work.
I like the idea that you're planting seeds, and you're creating something. I forgot that we created a gigantic kind of a quilt too. People that were there that day when we did the marker had an opportunity to sign a piece of a quilt, and we put that on exhibit in the museum. So creating something, not just words, but something tangible. I love the idea of the planting seeds. If you guys create any kind of thing in this town, make sure there are a lot of sunflowers around it, and that garden is tended, and that you keep reminding yourself that it's there, rising every spring or every summer. That'll be a positive thing, and people will have something to hang on to.
Appreciate that. You also mentioned, Steve, that you teach about the lynching and about the KKK in your classrooms. Right. And I'm wondering, do you receive pushback or upset parents that you're teaching those things in the classroom?
I never did. 32 years, I never did. Trump wasn't president then. Yeah. And I don't know what would happen now, because now Trump has allowed people to come out and be negative in a very overt way. It was always probably there. But if you really focus on it as what you're teaching is the truth, and it's what really happened, and it's local, then people have a connection to it. If I wanted to go on a soapbox and talk about how horrible they did things in Montgomery, Alabama, I don't think I'd get very far. I'm sure there are people that would come out of the woodwork and say, hey, you're overstepping your bounds. But no one can stop me from talking about Alonzo Tucker. I'm going to talk about it. And this is a Sundown Town. It is. It was. It's not is, it was. So talk about it, and it's the true thing, and approach it as an educational thing. I think you can make things a lot easier if everything you do is focused on an educational or an artistic event. You're teaching artistry, you're cooperating with other groups. There must be other groups you could pull in. Are there gardeners groups in your community? Pull in your gardener groups. Have them say, our group will take care of the garden in 2025, and then the next group takes in 2026. Just get as many people as you can involved in your project and make it educational, and then there's no way you can criticize it.
I also think that I want to be a fly on y'all wall when y'all because I feel like you in the planning, because I feel like what was really great with the Alonzo Tucker marker was that like it was a process, and so like if I can even be invited to your spaces when y'all start getting nervous, I'm being there like unmute me, But I think that's the thing of like you don't get to do this work by yourself. By yourself, being in community, it can be very daunting. It can be very overwhelming. Right now, with rollbacks on DEI, and I've been doing having so much conversation around what diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and belonging is and what it is not. And so, it's.
I'm always upset about this DEI thing. What's wrong with that? What's the opposite of diversity? Sameness. Do you want your community? Do people come visit Grants Pass because you look like Lawrence, Kansas? No. They want to know about the caves. They want to know about what history is here. They come to Coos Bay not because it looks like some town in New York. It has its own unique history. So I don't want sameness. I want diversity. What's the opposite of equity? Inequity. Why would anybody say inequity is a good thing? Okay? And inclusion? Why not include? What's opposite? Exclusion. Why would a community want to exclude any group of people that are positive in their community, that are helping grow their community? Joan.
You're talking about what's our soil collection thing, and Steve's talking about collaborating with parents. So, well, I think everyone can
There's
hear
people
me.
online too.
Okay. The thought that you're a little nervous about placing a marker because you're not sure if the community has actually committed to becoming a sunrise city. Why don't you start by having a big event, whatever it may be, little peat pots, let kids put soil in, start those sunflowers, take those home. What does this symbolize? This symbolizes that we want to be a sunrise community. Then they're in, multiple households, multiple yards through the summer. Then you do a mural somewhere in the city where they've committed to a space to eventually put the marker. And everybody does a thumbprint that makes the petals so they can say, I was part of this. And you just, you build from there. You start with the kids bringing the sunflowers home, or the churches doing a sunflower event or something that says, this is what we want to become, this sunflower city, this sunrise city. And then you build. Then you do the art project. Then you put the marker in. And it's just this, the community is committing and joining in to be, that this is our symbol. Not the caveman, sorry. Put a sunflower in the caveman's hand.
There it is.
Take out the club, put in a sunflower.
Thank you. Jayden, did you have a thought earlier?
Oh, I think it was around the DEIJB. Just with so much rollback and so much lack of commitment and things like that, like we still have to name the things. We can't participate in the rollbacks, and so that's why I said, like, I'm so inspired just coming here. I took so many photos and all, like, I want to be of service, of whatever that looks like. And I do think there is a level of community as well, because, like, having a Sundown Town, do we have any Black organizations in Grants Pass? Maybe asking the question of, did we invite them? Like, where are they? Or do we need to say, like, hey, like, maybe, like, y'all, maybe can we come into one of your events and one of your spaces, and what do y'all think about this work being done? Not putting it on them, on the burden on them, but also being able to, have them at the table as well.
We have them in advisory roles. That means that they get to give input without having to always be the hands and the feet. And we have a Black Affinity group that started last November. So as a part of the work that we're doing, people have historically felt disconnected in the Black community in Grants Pass. And so we're starting to kind of be a space where people are connecting, and they've taken that on. That's not something that Grants Pass Remembrance does, but we're now deeply connected. So it's growing, yes, even as we're doing it. But yeah. Jayden, Steve, Taylor, thank you so much for coming, for being here. It's such a gift as a community. You know how we need each other within our own community. Each community, we need other communities. We need to get to hear the stories and the things that are happening. We need each other, and to get to that inspiration, and the way that it sparks imagination for us in our own community is just such a gift. So thank you so much for what you've done and what you're doing.
Thank you so much for having us.
If it can happen in Coos Bay, it can happen at Grants Pass. Believe me.
We're excited for things to come. Thank you all for coming today and being with us. We're going to shift into a time of getting to Check out the tables in the back. If you've got more questions, they're still going to be here. And then in about 10 minutes, we're going to do a book giveaway. So hang out for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.